Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. In case you're new here, I'm Jit. I'm a biomedical science graduate and I also run a business here in Australia. And I finished my biomedical science degree with a 6.6 GPA. And I think that anyone can do well in school provided that they have the right strategies and have the dedication to put in the work. It's important to find a set of strategies that work well for you and that are ideally easy, simple and fun to help you prepare for your assessments and your exams, whether it be at university or whether it be in high school. And it's also important to adjust your strategies depending on what subjects that you have to study. For example, when I had to learn anatomy, I chose to use flashcards. And the flashcards that I have showing here really helped me understand the different parts of the human body and then learn them in the detail necessary to do well on my exams. A few weeks before the semester would start, I'd go onto Stoku and I would try and find information about my subjects. I'd try and do some research and figure out what assessment tasks I might get, or what notes there are online from previous students who have already done the subject. In case you don't know what Stoku is, it's a place where you can find past assessment tasks and information about your subjects. You can find the subject outlines, you can find detailed notes that previous students have used. Most of the time it's held behind a paywall, but if you just upload any documents, literally anything, as long as it's a subject at university or even a subject at high school, they'll give you premium, and the premium will last probably 2 weeks. So every document you upload just gives you premium. I'm not sponsored by them, but I owe a lot of my academic results to the information that I found on Stoku. Anyways, depending on what I would find on my subjects, I would then create a set of strategies to then best study for them. When I got my hands on the most recent version of the assessment task, I would then go ahead and print them out. I would take a highlighter, I would take a pen, and then I would just annotate all over it. I would highlight the most important parts, the textbooks, the recommended reading, and if there was any assessment tasks, I would make note of the actual dates of the assessment tasks, put them on my calendar, and then set reminders so I don't forget to do them. Also, the older versions of the textbooks are available online for free if you know where to look. There's plenty of websites like archive.org that you can go onto to find free versions of textbooks. It's especially easy to find these textbooks, especially if they're first or second year textbook. Also a good idea to get your hands on the most recent version of the textbook, or as recent as you can get for an affordable price. Usually the lecture notes are okay, and the videos that your lecturers would put together are fine, but the textbook goes into so much more depth. And if you want to do extra reading, you want to get a really deep understanding of your subject, you're going to need to get the textbook or something similar to a textbook to just go in and do your research and really kind of get the nuances of your subject. Most people are skeptical of using textbooks and buying them, but they've helped me out a lot in university. So let me tell you a story. In my first year of doing biomedical science, I had to do statistics, and my first assessment task for statistics went really well. I got like a high distinction, which is good. But the second one, I completely bombed. I just about passed, and that was really bad because that meant that I wasn't on track to get a HD, and I really wanted to get a HD for my first year subjects. So I remember just like doing some like math on the back of my exercise book and being like, okay, well, this is what this much percentage, this is what this much percentage, and my final was what this much. What would I need in the final to bring my grade up from roughly a projected C to a HD? And when I did all the working out, I had to get 95% on my final. If I didn't get 95%, if I got something lower than that, I was not getting a HD. So I really had to dial in, lock in, and try my best for the rest of that semester. And I actually borrowed the textbook from the professor. I got the textbook and I went through everything from the beginning, and because up until then I was just skimming through the lectures, I wasn't really taking it seriously. And when I actually looked through the textbook, I did every single part of it. I sat down and I wrote out notes and I kind of did all the questions. I got a very deep understanding of statistics, so much so that in the actual final I got 95% and I ended up getting a HD at the end of that subject. And you know, the textbook really helped me because most people don't know this, but there's some of the professors, they actually rip off questions straight from the textbook to put in their finals. So if you have the textbook, then the questions that you do in the textbook are very likely to also be the questions that you get in your final as well. Also, just going back to Stoku for a second, another really good use of Stoku is to see what previous people have done for assessments that you have currently. So let's say you had to do a scientific report and you're not sure what it should look like. You don't really have anything to go off. And sometimes the exemplar reports that they give you with uni, like with your assessment, are just terrible. They're like trash. So what I did was I would go to Stoku, I would see who has gotten a HD, or what person has like a high distinction like assessment task, or a high distinction like scientific report, and I would kind of download it, and I would see, okay, how does my report stack up against this person's for the same subject? And I can kind of use theirs as a guide. I wouldn't copy it because that's plagiarism, but I would use it as a guide and be like, okay, well, they did this, they organized it this way, and I didn't quite do it as good as them. So let me just edit this part. They have really cool headings. I like that heading there. Maybe I can tweak it a bit and then bring it myself, like bring it into my own assessment task. Another thing with uni is the way that you take notes is so important. When I first started uni, I was taking notes by hand. I was just stuff that you generally do in high school. You just write things by hand, use exercise books, but it was very time consuming. And as you go through uni, you're also getting older. Like, you're not going to be 18 when you start uni. You're going to be 18, 19, 20, and even older than that. And most people, unless their parents are really rich, right, they need to go get a job. So I need a way to balance the job that I had with doing well in university. And I needed to come up with a more efficient way to study. So that's when I came across Notion. And Notion was at first a lot. It's like so much you can do with Notion, and at times it can feel kind of overwhelming, all the things that you can do, especially as a beginner. But when I started using Notion more often, and I started to write all my notes in Notion, I could very easily just take a screenshot of like a lecture slide, drag it on, could write down notes, and Notion became the place where I kept most of my notes. And one more thing with something like biomedical science or any of the medical sciences is that when you go into certain labs, they don't let you bring in your computer. Sometimes they get you to use some tablet that they have instead. That's mainly because the labs are contaminated, and they don't want your personal belongings becoming contaminated. And the cool thing about Notion is you can actually publish your Notion pages to the web, and there's a unique link that you can use to access your Notion page. So if I ever had to do a very, I guess, complicated practical, and I've kind of created some notes around it to help me do the practical, I will just take that Notion link, send it to myself with email, log into that tablet, and then I have that link there. I can click on the link and I can access all my notes while in the lab. So that's why I found Notion so useful. Throughout the semester, I would also try and turn my notes in Notion from just generic notes into active recall questions. So Notion has this drop-down function where you can click a button for a sentence, and then you can have a drop-down to have an answer. I used to like put in a question as a sentence and then press the drop down and put in the answer. And I would kind of use them as rudimentary flashcards, and I would use them to kind of like test me. So rather than writing down all my notes and in normal notes format, I would write it down in questions and put the notes as the answers to those questions, because knowledge is supposed to go in your head. Even though it's nice to have it all written out beautifully in our notes, eventually all that knowledge and stuff that has to go in our minds. And the best way to do that is using active study habits or active study techniques like active recall. So for revision sessions, I would just go through my active recall questions one by one, and I'd ask myself, okay, can I answer this? Yes. Can I answer this? No. And if I couldn't answer it, I would just highlight it in a particular color, and I normally had a green, yellow, red system. So like green was like, I could answer it pretty well, but I needed to do a bit more work on it. Yellow, I needed a lot more work. Red means I completely have no idea how to answer that question, so I have to go back and revise over that particular section again. For me, I realized that the only way I could have balanced uni and everything else I had going on in life, including work and other things that I was pursuing at the time, was if I have very efficient study habits. And using things like active recall just shaved down hours of my time, and typing instead of writing down my notes shaved down so much time. So it gave me the time and freedom to have a life outside of uni and also be able to do well and score good grades. So in the last couple of years of my degree, I actually almost exclusively used active recall questions. Sometimes if it was just like, let's say I had to do something where there was a cell and I had to figure out what type of cell it was, I would just take a screenshot of the cell, and then as a drop-down menu option, I would have the answer to that cell in there instead. So I kind of tweaked it depending on the subject that I had, and I just almost exclusively used active recall questions. And that helped me learn very quickly. Just to wrap up, these are the strategies that worked best for me. Remember that academic success is finding the right strategies that work for you. So feel free to adjust the ones that I've mentioned to best suit you.